For holding. We are now joined with head coach Todd Berry of Louisiana Monroe. If you have a question for Coach Berry, please press star 1 to get in the queue at this time to ask questions. Again, that's star 1 to get in the queue to ask questions. The Warhawks are coming off a 30-24 loss against Louisiana Lafayette last week and now traveled this week to Troy, Alabama to take on Troy. That game will be taking place at 2:30 p.m. Central Time and will be televised on ESPN3. Coach Berry, before we get to questions, why don't you give us your thoughts on last week's game and this upcoming game against Troy?
Yeah, it was another hard-fought game. We've traditionally had those with Lafayette, and it's been this one was no different. Obviously, I think that we talked with our players before the game that generally the kicking game gets magnified about tenfold in monsoon conditions, and I think that's kind of what happened. They out-executed us in our kicking game, and our kicking game really hurt us during the course of the game and changed the game. And so something that we've got to continue to shore up on. And obviously, as you mentioned, we're going to play a Troy team that really gave Appalachian State, who we've obviously already played, a really, really good ball game. And so we know that we're going in to face another quality opponent.
Thank you, Coach Berry. As a reminder to our members of the media, please press star 1 at this time to get in the queue to ask questions. Coach, we've talked a lot on here about some of the younger student-athletes that had to step in and take larger roles on your team this year. On Saturday against Louisiana Lafayette, who were some of the student-athletes that stepped in and played major roles that you thought, did a great job stepping into bigger roles on Saturday?
We're having to play quite a few younger players right now. Sometimes that's a good thing because they're ready, and then sometimes it's a bad thing because they're not, and they're just being forced into situations because of injuries. But I'm really, really pleased with Marcus Green, wide receiver that has had some hiccups along the way in this process, but is really showing both the ability and the acumen to be a really special player, and he continues to improve dramatically. And so I'm really, really excited about kind of what he's doing. The rest of them are not quite to that level yet in relation to being consistent, and that's generally what you face with the younger group that you'd like to see a little bit more consistency out of.
And Marcus Green was one of 3 student-athletes on Saturday that caught touchdown pass from Garrett Smith. How would you rate his performance, especially in the first half when it seemed like you were putting together long drives and scoring drives against Louisiana Lafayette?
Well, I thought Garrett did a really nice job of handling the conditions. I think one of the most difficult things there is out there because we had a constant rain the whole game. I mean, it wasn't like it was on and off. It was just constant. Was kind of handling the wet balls, being able to still throw the football. It's something that we work on, and obviously we've had much of a drought here in Louisiana, and so we didn't have as many opportunities out in practice, so we used soapy balls during practice to try to every week to try to make sure that we're ready for that. But I thought he handled that really well, and I think there's starting to become, obviously we got a Jalen Holly back, which was huge for us at receiver, but there's starting to become a comfort level with Marcus Green now that he knows where Marcus is going to be, and Marcus is expecting balls at the appropriate times. And there's as I've said before, there's a chemistry and an orchestration that goes on between the quarterbacks and receivers, and it sometimes takes a little time to get there. This week we'll have Rashawn Caesar back, and Rashawn's an outstanding player for us, but he's also a comfort level, I think, for Garrett, and so Garrett kind of continues to grow, and I know he's going to be excited about having Rashawn back also.
So you kind of led into my next question. I was going to ask about Jalen Holly, being back, and if you noticed anything with how Louisiana Lafayette played. Did it change the way they did their coverages on your offense? Did you notice it open up guys like Marcus Green or anyone else?
Well, it's kind of hard to theorize on that, just because I think that if the game conditions would have been normal, I think we could have said, hey, this changed this or changed that. I think that certainly Lafayette played a little bit more zone than what they maybe had played in the past. I don't know if that has a function of a Jalen being out there or the rainy conditions in relation to what you're dealing with. Certainly, when it's rainy like that, there's opportunities maybe for more interceptions and that type of thing whenever you're playing a zone coverage, knowing that the balls are going to escape and that you're going to have people that are going to have eyes on the ball rather than eyes on a man. But certainly having a Jalen back gives he's an awfully good player for us, and anytime that you lose players like Rashawn Caesar and Jalen Holly, it's going to impact what you can do on offense, and the defenses recognize that and they adjust accordingly.
And you mentioned Rashawn Caesar being back. What kind of lift do you think that'll provide to your offense on Saturday?
Well, huge. Not only has he been an all-conference player for us, but he's been elected team captain 2 years in a row by our team. And so you're not just getting a player back, you're getting a leader back. And, again, I think when you have a younger quarterback, that knowledge that you're going to have a guy out there that can make plays for you, but is also going to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there, I think becomes really, really critical. And, it allows you to kind of get back into a rhythm, being able to throw the football. And the nice thing for us with Jalen and Rashawn both is they've been in our offense now, and so we can move them around, and that allows us to start kind of creating some matchups, which, we were kind of lost there for a time period when both those guys were out, that you couldn't necessarily move those younger players around. They were having struggles enough just trying to learn one position, let alone having to be able to kind of slide around to be able to get personnel matchups that you'd like.
All right, Coach Berry, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.